we want to verify that before creating a lesson, we must actually pass in a title. So let's go ahead and create a test for that. Public function test title is required to create a lesson. Okay, so how do we do this? We need a series, a lesson, and we need to make that endpoint request. Okay, so I'm just going to copy all of this and paste right here, and I'm going to pull out the title from the lesson. So we don't need to pass in the title, but we need to make an assertion that the title was required. So right here, the assertion we're going to be making is simply assert that the session has errors, and this should be validation errors for the title field. Okay, so fair enough. Login as administrator, we might not need this. We would see through our test, and then we create a series, pass in the series, and then assert that the session has some errors. So let's run this test specifically. Yeah, and sure enough, we have field asserting that false is true. Now we need to make sure we have some validation, right? So I'll head over to my lessons controller, and I think these one-line controllers are really the best. Therefore, I'm going to create a custom request for this, just so I don't have to include additional lines right here. So I'm going to create this custom request, PHP artisan make request, create lesson request. Okay, that's created. Therefore, we need to create lesson request right here. So Laravel is going to actually inject this one. We need to import that. So use broadcast http request create lesson request. Let's head over to that class. Okay, so let's just set this to true, and we're gonna see how this authorize method works later. So we'll set that to true just to validate all requests. Then for our test to pass, we must make sure that the title is required. Let's run that test one more time, and we still get this error. Now, and this is what I wanted to show you. It still fails. Why? Because we're using a post.json method. Now, this post.json method creates an environment, and this environment is for testing JSON APIs. Therefore, nothing like sessions actually exist. Therefore, when we check the session, it didn't save any session value. But if we switch this out actually to check the status of the response that we got, we would actually see that it's a 422. Let's check this out. Yeah, and it passes. Okay, so we have a successful response as a 422 because Laravel understands that this is a JSON API environment for the testing. But let's switch this out back to session has errors, pull out the JSON right here, and Laravel is going to make an ordinary or normal post request, including sessions and all that. Then let's run this. Yeah, and now it passes. Okay, so you have to know when to use the post JSON or when to use the post, depending on your situation. In this case, the post was just okay. Now we need to also test that for the description. Let's just duplicate this method. Test a title or test a description is required to create a lesson. Therefore, our lessons array is going to be without the description, right? So paste that in, and we'll pull out the description right here. So assert that session has errors for description. So let's run this specific test to make sure it fails. It does. Back to our create lessons request, and we could just add a validation rule for the description to say it's required. Run that test one more time, and everything should be okay. Okay, it is. Now one more test for the episode number and the video ID. Now test the description is required to create a lesson. So test an episode number is required to create a lesson. So rather than this, we're going to pass in description. Okay, so assert that we have errors for episode number. Let's run that again. Okay, it fails. Let's check out our validation rule. Make sure it's required. And it says, now I'm going to hit pause for a second. For this video, I'm going to call it a day and see you in the next one. Thank you.